Hi! Welcome to my Barbie review. Please like and subscribe. Enjoy the time-lapse of me making a loose recreation of the Barbie movie poster in Blender and Plasticity, which will play alongside the review. Enjoy! Barbie was a bad movie. It was also a very interesting movie, and I really appreciate that because a lot of movies are pretty boring and generic and not thought-provoking. On a pure enjoyability level, it was not very enjoyable. It did have aspects that were funny, and I should also say that on a base level, anytime people get together to make a movie, I really admire that, and I think that it has an inherent level of difficulty. That's the fact that they achieved that is very impressive, and of course a lot of the technical details were pretty excellent and admirable. It was also very disappointing because I'm a big fan of Greta Gerwig. I really loved Frances Ha, and I liked Lady Bird quite a bit, and she seems like such a talented and thoughtful individual. I think also the marketing hyped it up way too much. There was this impression that I got that it was going to be an iconic film of the era. But I found that mostly it was just very propagandistic. I think there definitely is validity, but there are so many of them, and they're all half-baked, and they don't explore them in a meaningful way, and it just comes off as incredibly incoherent. And one example that I thought was pretty ridiculous is the ideology of the film makes it seem like the war of the sexes is a zero-sum, that one gender has to be on top, and that's inherently at the expense of the other gender. It also seemed fine with corporate autocracy. The only problem was that women weren't in charge, but they would be fine with wage slavery and subjugating the lower classes, just as long as a few women were involved at the top, or maybe more women than men. Whereas if you approach it from a framework of Hegelian synthesis, then you can find alternative approaches that are much more socially constructive. Also, I should say that me disagreeing with the political agenda of a film or any piece of art, my disagreement with it doesn't make it bad art, and it doesn't preclude me from enjoying it. One aspect of the context of the film that was very interesting is that it reminded me of the movie Network, or not necessarily that specific movie, but it's a movie that Jared Bauer has recommended. And the premise of Network is that the leaders of the network put on programming which is against the network itself, but they continue that programming because it's very popular and it makes them a lot of money. And that's a framework that I use to interpret a number of different properties. Like The Boys is a satire about an evil corporation which in real life is produced by what a lot of people would call an evil corporation. And I haven't done research on the production background of the film, but it looks like it's produced by Mattel, so I would imagine that this has the same kind of economic structure, that they're fine with putting something out that's critical of themselves as long as they know it's going to make them money. And it makes the whole endeavor come off as very cynical. And I'm very interested in thinking about what were the motivations of Greta and Noah and the people that they discussed this production arrangement with. And it's impossible to know. It happens behind closed doors. And I'm not privy to that information. And there could be a lot of interesting reasons for these kinds of behaviors. Also, there were scenes with America Ferrera's character and her daughter where they were preaching, and it was just so cringy and obnoxious, and it made them feel not like characters, like they weren't real in the context of the story, that you could see the person who was writing out this dialogue. And that's what I was thinking about while I was watching them. And unfortunately, the child actor was not very proficient at her craft, so I didn't really buy her as a character. But I thought that America, even though America's lines were very cringy at times, she was pretty good at delivering them. And in general, the acting was pretty good in the film. Also, there was this message, particularly in a monologue from America, which was about how women have a laundry list of problems. And the problems do exist, but they also have manifestations in the male population. By no means is the entire list, maybe even most of the list, exclusive to the female population. Ryan Gosling wasn't as funny as I thought he was going to be, but he was still fairly funny. I also had seen an interview that Greta did where she was talking about her relationship with Noah, about how they would write in separate rooms most of the time, and she was obsessed with trying to impress him through her writing. And I couldn't help but compare that to the relationship that Ken has with Barbie, of he's just completely desperate to impress her. So it seems like maybe the film conflates broader sociological gender dynamics with the gender dynamics that she experiences in her own life. And in general, I think that can be a bad mistake to make when you're doing sociological commentary, because individual experiences don't necessarily reflect the emergent realities that occur of living in large groups of people. I made a mistake in how I presented this point. I think that it's technically accurate, but it can be valid sometimes to interpret one's personal experience as a symptom of broader sociological trends. I think the point that I was trying to make, or that I was thinking of, was more that because Greta has such a strong emotional experience regarding this in her own life, she might be projecting it disproportionate to its social relevance. I also had seen this meme about America and her daughter talking while in the background Alan was killing people. And so I went in thinking that Alan was a serial killer, and then he wasn't. And I thought it would have been way funnier if Alan was a serial killer. So I was very disappointed at that. And I'll end with a principle that I generally operate on. It's not a strict principle, it's more of a heuristic. But it's the idea that you can learn much more from negative experiences than you can learn from positive experiences. And that's what I really appreciate about this movie, that it was really intellectually grating, and it was very thought-provoking because of that, and it made me think, what is the specific reason that I disagree with whatever the point was that was being made? And I always make sure to ask myself, do I disagree with this because there's a good sociological or social reason for it? Or does it just conflict with my aesthetic or lifestyle preferences? And those are two very different things. And I don't know if there's a word for it. I would like to come up with a word for it if there isn't, but the idea of some cultural entity which is an inducer of that kind of experience, because I am interested in learning experiences, and it's useful to have things that you can go to that will challenge your beliefs and understandings and really make you think hard to justify the things that you think. So, with all that said, are Greta and Margot girl bosses or boy employees? How about Ken? Are you a feminist? Let me know in the comments down below. Okay, I'm heading out, and as always, your mom.